Yeah, well, now the KPMG officials have resigned, but should it go even further than that? Remember, they are accused of facilitating the theft of taxpayers' money by giving Gupta link to firms' clean audit reports. To discuss this, I'm now joined by the CEO of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, former Auditor General, Terence Nombembe. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, citizens in South Africa are reading this, not understanding fully what these processes are. It's scary when somebody who we trust, much like we trust a doctor, signs off something as it's okay. We don't question it, we believe it's true, and we take it to the bank. My auditor said it's okay. Is it a concern for you as the CEO of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants that some of your members may be involved in activities that are less than good?
That's correct, Peter. It's always a concern. That's a general rule and our starting point, that we need to conduct ourselves in terms of the expectations of the Code of Conduct that demands that we actually have excellence when it comes to due care, when it comes to integrity. And we understand that that's what our members are trained to be and do. However, there are instances where that may not happen as planned. And that's why we've got processes to remedy those situations and follow up on them and deal with them in terms of the SAICA processes, which work hand in hand with the processes of the regulator, the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors.
All right, so we know that the regulator is going to look at this and investigate. Typically, what will they be checking?
The regulator normally would look at the processes that the institution would have followed, or the firm would have followed, in arriving at its conclusion. Similar to what in this instance, the KPMG internal review has done to basically evaluate from A to Z the processes that were followed in arriving at conclusions on the audits and reviews that they actually focused on. But the only distinction that I think is important to draw here is that the regulator would normally look at issues that relate to auditing or a test function, or put plainly, external audit work. What the internal review has done by the international team, it has looked at the totality of all the work that was provided that gave rise to some of the shortcomings and the remedies that KPMG in their media statement have outlined today.
All right, so the firm has been quite clear in saying that the investigation did not identify any evidence of illegal behavior or corruption by KPMG partners or staff. And they're almost saying that we are testing them against our own high standards. So could it be that the regulator may actually find no wrongdoing in this?
Peter, remember, you're referring to one aspect.
Yeah.
The media statement of KPMG, and it may be better, in fact, to get KPMG to have this conversation.
Right.
Outlined all the areas that they were concerned about. And in some of those areas, I think they were quite explicit as to what they would do to remedy the situation where there were shortcomings. And strengthen controls, strengthen the integrity processes, quality control processes, etc., etc. Yeah.
So what they have said is that they're going after Jacques Wessels, the lead partner on some of the Gupta audits. He would necessarily be one of your members at the Institute. What are you going to do about Jacques Wessels?
The process, Peter, is that all the members that have got an incident of deviation from the Code of Conduct would be taken through two steps within SAICA. One is a step where we look at the extent to which the professional conduct was breached, and if it is a serious enough matter or it's appealed, it will go to the disciplinary committee. And both of those processes within SAICA are very independent, run by independent adjudicators that are made up of judges, lawyers, and accountants. So that's the way it happens for everyone.
Okay, so
without citing specific names.
So sanctions could be what if they're found to have breached your norms and standards?
They do vary. But in the professional conducts phase, they range from up to 250,000 per case.
Fine.
All right. Or possibility of suspension. When it goes to the disciplinary committee, that can go to up to 500,000 per case. So if you've got 10 cases or counts, you have to multiply that by that number.
All right.
That's the possibility.
So
or suspension.
So lawyers get struck off the roll and quite likely will never practice as a lawyer again. What happens to chartered accountants that find themselves in problems?
Actually, that's the point I was getting to.
Oh, okay.
It can be a fine that I've just described, or temporary suspension or permanent suspension, depending on the gravity of the situation.
And permanent suspension means that you can't sign audit certificates, but you can carry on practicing as an accountant.
You cannot practice. You cannot use the designation Chartered Accountant in South Africa, CISA, nor can you practice in the name of a Chartered Accountant or in your capacity as a Chartered Accountant.
Right. Yeah. So what would happen to KPMG as a firm? Again, you know, they're denying any wrongdoing, but if there is wrongdoing that's found, the regulator might sanction them. How might they do that?
The regulator has got its own processes, which has got its own parameters. All we do with SAICA, as with the regulator, is to always compare notes, because there are always overlaps between the findings that we make and the findings that the regulator may have. And it's important that we always stay in touch insofar as these matters are concerned. But more importantly, in this instance, is to also stay in touch with the firm itself, because they've done a very impressive and very extensive review. And in conducting our own processes, we're going to rely a lot on that work. We'll never duplicate the work unless it is necessary to do so. Yeah. All
right, we've run out of time, but very briefly, and it's come up a lot. 4 partners went to the Gupta wedding. Is that a no-no, or is it a problem when you go to one of your clients' weddings?
There's no straight answer on that, Peter. And there's a standard that's coming up now that deals with issues of inducement and gifts. And we're going to comment on that in the next month or so.
Okay, so we'll get. I suppose as incidents happen, clarity is need to be drawn on how people should behave.
Indeed.
All right, Terence Nombembe, thank you very much indeed. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for giving us some insights on a process I'm sure that a lot of people will be following with keen interest over time. Okay.